All right, well, welcome back once again to 5 Homes to Freedom. We are still in Module 2, Lesson number 8, and we're going to be talking about joint venture agreements or joint venture partnerships, and it's one of my favorite topics. So let's just jump right in here. Get going. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take a look at, in Lesson 8, we're going to take a look at a typical deal and how to structure that deal. Figure out what it is you want out of the deal and what you're going to give up for that deal as well. And then we're going to look at the documentation that's attached to that. So it doesn't sound like we're going to talk about a whole lot, but we've got lots to cover. So first of all, let's take a look at a typical deal opportunity, keeping in mind that there are so many different scenarios out there that there's no way that I could even attempt to cover them all. So I'm going to deal with what I feel is the most typical deal opportunity that you'll come across. So here you go out and you found yourself a deal, and you're willing to rehab that property or fix it up or convert it, whatever the case may be. And once it's all fixed up, you're going to do the management. You'll find the tenants, collect the rents, take care of the late night calls, the plug toilets, etc. Excuse me. Now, you don't have the cash to put into this deal, so you're going to get an investor to provide the 20% down for you. The investor is also going to qualify for the mortgage along with you. So the title, therefore, is going to be in both your names. However, you want to make sure that you're controlling the deal, you're in charge of the deal, so you want the investor to be hands-off. You just want your investor to provide you the money and potentially some credit for the qualifying of the mortgage itself. So that's the scenario. So here are a pile of questions, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, but these are probably the most common questions that you're going to see or experience. So in a deal like this, how do you actually pay the investor? How do you split the cash flow? How is the equity growth going to be split and handled? What about future cash calls when they happen? How is that going to be handled? Well, what if you have a disagreement? How are you going to handle that? What if one party wants to leave the deal early? What is the exit strategy? Do you even have one? What if one person doesn't do what they actually claim or say they were going to do or promised they were going to do at the very beginning? Well, what we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at these top three and how to deal with these three. So what do you pay? Excuse me. What do you pay? Talk about the cash flow and the equity. Now, unfortunately, none of these scenarios are clear, cut, and dry because there's so many factors that you have to take into consideration. For example, you have to take a look at the quality of the property and the profitability of the deal itself. How much money is there actually to spread around? What is the level of experience that you're bringing to the table with respect to the deal? What's going to be the perceived risk by the lender? How much risk are they taking in this deal? And the level of knowledge as well that you bring to the table. So with respect to the perceived risk, a lot of investors will say, well, you want to do 50-50 where I bring the money in and you bring nothing in but just the deal, and you want me to split it 50-50? Why won't I go out and find my own deals? Well, that's a very common question. And right off the get-go, I'd say, well, you're more than welcome. If you want to go out and get the deal yourself and do the deal yourself, go for it. But the reason they've come to you is because they don't have the time, the energy, the knowledge, or the ability to do it. They're just trying to position themselves to get better than 50%. Then the next thing is, well, I'm putting in all the money. You're not putting in any money. I'm taking all the risk because if you don't meet your goals, you don't do what you say you're going to do, I'm the one who's risking my money. Well, that's a valid point. So if you don't have any credibility behind you, you don't have the knowledge or the experience, then that level of risk is going to be higher for the investor. So that's why I say it depends on the factors. So let's make some assumptions here. Even if you've done 10, 15 deals in the past, what I'd like you to do is think of this, that you're doing your first deal. Maybe it's even your second deal. If this is your very first deal, though, and you brought the property, you found the deal, and you've brought that to the investor, And the question now is, how are you going to split that cash flow, and what equity are you going to give the investor between you and your investor? As I say, most people will say 50-50. Now, what I've done in the past when I've done live events, I'll go through this scenario with the group. And when I have 100 people sitting in front of me, 50 people would probably put up their hand that they'd want 50-50. Okay? And then probably another 30 would say that they'd be willing to do 40-60, where they keep 40% and give the investor 60%. All right? So as we keep getting with the smaller ratios here, we get down to the point where it's virtually almost free, where you're doing it for as little as 5% and giving 95% to the investor. By this point in time, the group in my group, there might only be 1 or 2 people who will raise their hand and say they would do that deal. Everybody else is saying, no, I'm not going to put all that work and effort in for that little bit of return. What they're failing to see is the benefits of doing this. So the benefits of doing say a 5-95 split is that it's going to provide you with the experience, it's going to provide you with the credibility, and the more deals will come to you, because that same investor will definitely want to reinvest with you, but you're not going to reinvest at a 5-95 split. You might do the next deal with them at, say, a 70-30 split. And as the investor becomes more comfortable with you and your level of experience and knowledge of the deals, they're going to recognize and realize there's value working with you even at 50-50. But you have to work up to that level. Bottom line is, you have to do what feels right. I personally will never take advantage of somebody. If I don't have the experience, then I will work for free to gain the experience before I feel I have the right to be compensated financially. And I always make sure that my investor wins big. Even if there's a loss in the transaction and it's not going to meet the goals that we projected, I always make sure my investor gets paid before I get paid. I have never and will never pay myself before I pay my investor, because my own personal integrity, if I lie and fail to meet my goal with my investor, do you think I could do another deal with that investor? Do you think that investor might talk to other investors? Absolutely. So you have to make sure you take care of your investors first and foremost. All right, well, there's lots of other issues to deal with as well. What about the future cash calls? So if all of a sudden the roof needs to be reshingled, or if the furnace has died, you need to install a new $5,000 furnace, where's that money going to come from? How are you going to handle the disputes that may arise between the two of you if you don't agree on how the property is being managed? What if one of you decides that you need to exit early, or you're being moved because of your job, or for health reasons you have to get out of the deal? How are you going to do that? What if one person doesn't do what they say they will do? And this is a big one, actually, especially if you're dealing with people that you don't know very well. You've got a good feeling with, but you just don't know them very well. And I can't believe the number of people who actually get into deals without doing their due diligence on their partners. You want to make sure that the person that you're dealing with operates with a level of integrity. But what happens if they don't do what they said they were going to do? How are you going to resolve that? So if there is a cash call or the investor needs out early, these are all things that need to be resolved in a what-if document. So for example, what I've done is I would hand my partner a sheet of paper, or just tell them, take a sheet of paper, write down all of the what-ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? Anything and everything. It doesn't matter how major it is or how silly or how little it is. You write them all down. We then get together and we compare our notes, and we will have similar concerns and issues. And then as we go through the issues, we resolve them right then and there. We come up with solutions that we both agree to, and we jot those down. We now have a very informal joint venture agreement. However, you need to make sure that this what-if document is legal, binding, and there's no loopholes in it. So you're going to take that document, you're going to take that document to your lawyer. And your lawyer is going to convert it into a joint venture agreement or a co-tenancy agreement. Depends where you live, what the lawyers like to refer to them as. Now, with a co-tenancy agreement, what is the cost of doing this? Well, again, there's no easy answer to this because it depends on the lawyers. It depends on how much your lawyer charges per hour. It depends on the complexity of the deal. It depends on how clear your what-if document is, how much work your lawyer has to do to transcribe it or fix it, whatever the case may be. So what I'm proposing is that a cost for a single-family house or a duplex with a joint venture, one joint venture partner, something pretty straightforward and simple, could cost you anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 to put together a proper joint venture agreement / co-tenancy agreement. Now, obviously, if it's a bigger deal and you've got multiple partners, especially if they're from across the country, it just becomes more complicated, more time-consuming for the lawyers. It could easily run up to $8,000, $15,000. There's really no limit. It depends on the complexity of the property. Now, I'd mentioned before during the webinars that with my company, ARCA, when the most recent large transaction we did, which was 2 apartment buildings, we had, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the size of the building so much as it does with the number of partners that are involved. So in our particular case, we had 6 partners, and 4 of the partners were across the country in different provinces, which meant we had to, plus there's lawyers for everybody as well, and each partner had to have their lawyer review the co-tenancy agreement. So that's trying to get 6 lawyers to agree on anything is virtually impossible. So the way we did it was I took the lead, I took charge, and we did the effective, what-if document, but I already had one to start with. I took that and I went through it and I modified it as best I could based upon what I thought the other partners' concerns and issues would be. I gave that to my lawyer to review, provide a draft, which then went out to all of the other lawyers, and they reviewed it with their clients, and they raised any questions or concerns and sent it back to us, and we tweaked the agreement. We probably tweaked it 4, maybe 5 times before we had an agreement that all 6 lawyers and partners agreed upon. And the total cost for that was $15,000. My lawyer gave me a break and only charged me $12,000 because of all the work that I sent his way. But that gives you an idea what's involved with respect to creating a document. So a lot of people say, well, that's an awful lot of money. Even $2,500 is an awful lot of money to spend up front for a joint venture agreement. I think I'm just going to do a handshake, or maybe we'll just do the what-if document and we'll sign it ourselves. Well, the challenge with that is if you have to look at that, if you do have a challenge, then you have to resolve that challenge and it ends up going to court because both parties don't agree, then you're going to have a document that hasn't been well written by a lawyer and it can be interpreted 2 different ways by different lawyers. It will most likely be thrown out. It was a good attempt, but it really had no value unless you have your lawyer actually create it for you. So spend the money because the value for this document, it really is priceless. What I have done is I have included the co-tenancy agreement that I referred to above that we paid $12,000 for. I've included that as an example for you to go through. I've also included 3 or 4 other samples of joint venture agreements that you can refer to if you wish, and just use them as a template for moving forward. So I just want to share some points to remember and keep in the forefront. And I've got them highlighted in red here because this is really important to me. I will not do business with people that I know do not do business fairly and treat people ethically. So always ask yourself, how would you like to be treated? And treat the other person equally or better. Always strive to make it a win-win situation so that both parties win. Always make sure that your partners have their own lawyers review any documents, because you never want them to come back and say, well, I never had a chance to review the document. If it gets challenged in court, then it could be thrown out. make it obvious that you are being fair and open. I put in brackets here an investor letter. So I've also included in an attachment a letter, a Word document. This is a letter that I used to use when I was doing a lot of lease options. When I was doing the lease options, I was approaching investors to invest their retirement funds through mortgage, the second mortgage against the property. So I was recycling my initial down payment. And the letter, when you read it, you'll understand why it's written the way it is, because it's geared towards the lease options. But it can be geared towards anything. It's the concept, it's the idea. What I did was I answered, in the body of the letter, I answered any fears and concerns I felt that my investor was going to have. I also answered any fears and concerns that the lawyer was going to have. So I would make a statement similar to, your lawyer is going to raise this issue as being a concern, and why I feel it's not a concern is blah, 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 blah. The fact that I raised that as an issue up front means that I'm providing full disclosure. My investor is going to feel so much more comfortable. Actually, one of my investors came back after visiting the lawyer, and he was going off on a rampage about all the things that the lawyer was telling him that he has to be worried about and concerned about. And I was really concerned. I thought, oh man, there goes this investment. I'm not getting the money here. So when he was finished his rant, I said, wow, okay, so I guess you're not going to invest? He goes, oh, no, absolutely. I love it. I understand it. I'm just telling you what the lawyer said. He said, everything you said, he was going to say, is exactly what he did. So this investment letter can be a huge value to you. Check it out and make use of that when you're approaching people. Always operate with integrity, and you can do this for all deals, whether they're big or small. Doesn't matter. And especially do this with family members. It really bothers me when I see family members get together and do deals together, which is great, awesome. Don't stop it. However, unfortunately, what happens is most times they just do things on a handshake or very roughly write things down on a piece of paper. And it doesn't matter whether they're family members or not. People's memories are short. People's interpretation of what was said is different. You just think things didn't go the way you wanted, or that's not how you remembered it. And all of a sudden you want to get out of the deal early, but your family member says, no, you can't get out now. So now you've got this stress and tension in the family, and it can really tear a family apart needlessly. Whereas if you've got your co-tenancy or your joint venture agreement clearly written, you could have a falling out, or you could have a disagreement with a family member, but at least you've got a mechanism to resolve it that both parties have agreed to beforehand. And most likely you won't have that reason for the fallout because you've already dealt with the issue when you created the document in the first place. So there's lots here in this lesson for you to go through. There's lots of reading, lots of material to review, and I'm sure that there's going to be lots of questions. This one always generates lots of questions when we talk about joint ventures and co-tenancy agreements. So again, please wait until we've gone through the entire Module 2 before you fire off tons of questions. If they don't get answered during the live recording, then by all means, can at 5 Homes to Freedom, and I'm more than happy to answer those questions and possibly even carry them forward to the next live webinar for everybody else's benefit as well. So until the next lesson, take care, and we'll see you at the top.